Princess Lyra of Velthora sat by the tall crystal window of her palace, staring out at the golden sky of her world. The light shimmered across the city, casting soft glows on the spires and towers. Despite the beauty, her heart felt heavy. Today her father had announced something she could hardly believe. She was to be married not just to any being, but to a human from a distant star system. Lyra had heard the stories about humans all her life. To the Velthorans, humans were loud, aggressive, and destructive. They had conquered many planets, leaving devastation in their wake. Though Lyra had never met one, the stories painted them as monsters in armor. The thought of spending her life with such a creature filled her with fear. Her father's voice still tinted in her ears. "This alliance is for the good of our people. Lyra, you are to meet Captain James Hale tomorrow. He is a warrior of great honor. I know this will be a challenge for you, but you must try." Lyra turned from the window and paced the room. Her mind raced with images of a tall, cruel man, his eyes cold and unfeeling. She imagined him towering over her, his armor clanking with every step, commanding obedience rather than earning respect. Every corner of her mind whispered warnings. He is cruel. He will not care for you. Humans do not love. They only conquer. Her attendants noticed her anxiety and tried to offer comfort. "Princess," said her closest handmaiden Ilaria, "do not worry too much. Humans are not as terrible as the stories make them sound. Perhaps he is kind beneath the armor." Lyra shook her head. "Ilaria, you do not understand. My people have seen what humans do. I cannot imagine kindness from one who has destroyed worlds," Ilaria sighed, knowing that words could not reach the princess's heart. "Then at least meet him," she said gently. "See for yourself." Lyra's eyes narrowed. Meet him. The thought made her stomach twist. She had heard stories of diplomats and royals who had met humans and returned shaken. Many said they were terrifying up close, their presence commanding attention even in silence. How could I face such a being? Night fell over the palace, and Lyra could not sleep. She lay on her bed, staring at the glowing ceiling, imagining the human arriving on Velthora. She pictured the landing ship descending from the sky, its metal wings dark against the horizon. Soldiers would step out, armored and intimidating, and at their head would be him, the human captain, the one she was to wed. Hours passed. The soft hum of the palace did little to calm her nerves. Her mind replayed stories she had seen on ancient holograms, humans in battle, shouting, fighting, and surviving situations that would have destroyed any Velthoran. Their strength was unmatched, their resilience terrifying. And I am to marry one of them? Morning came with a sky painted in soft oranges and pinks. Lyra dressed carefully, choosing a gown of silver silk that shimmered like the morning light. Her attendants helped her, whispering reassurances. She could hear the distant rumble of the human delegation's landing ship as it approached the palace. From her high window, Lyra watched as the craft descended. Smoke and dust swirled around it as it landed on the golden plains outside the palace gates. Soldiers emerged, their armor gleaming. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the group. And then she saw him, tall, broad, still. He moved with a quiet authority that did not demand attention, but naturally drew it. He was nothing like the monsters in the stories. Still, his presence was formidable. Lyra's heart pounded, and she could barely look away. Suddenly, one of her palace guards stumbled on the landing ramp. Lyra gasped, expecting the human captain to ignore him or scold him harshly. But instead, he knelt and helped the guard to his feet. There was a brief smile on the human's face, gentle, almost shy. Lyra blinked, confused. This is not what I expected. The next hour passed in a blur. The human delegation approached the palace gates, escorted by Velthoran guards. Lyra remained behind the window, watching as her fears clashed with her curiosity. Every gesture the human made, every nod, every careful movement seemed to contradict the stories she had been told. Still, doubts lingered. She could not shake the voice in her head. Kindness can be a trick. Humans are strong. Their hearts may hide cruelty. When her father summoned her, Lyra hesitated. Go and meet him, he said firmly. You will never know the truth if you remain afraid. Her attendants guided her down the grand hall, and Lyra felt the weight of every step. The palace corridors were lined with Velthoran tapestries, depicting centuries of their history, of wars fought and peace maintained. But today, none of it mattered. All her attention focused on the man she was about to meet. The doors to the audience chamber opened, revealing a room bathed in soft light. At the far end, Captain James Hale waited. He stood quietly, not in a threatening pose, but at ease, hands folded calmly. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. He stepped forward slightly. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice even and steady. "It is an honor to meet you." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. His tone was not commanding or harsh. It carried respect, and even something she could not name, perhaps sincerity, as they were introduced formally. She noticed the small details. How he acknowledged each Velthoran attendant with a polite nod. How he listened patiently when questions were asked. How his eyes softened when he spoke to her younger brother, who had been curious about the humans and had wandered close. Lyra could hardly believe it. This human. He does not seem cruel at all, yet her mind would not let go of the fear completely. She remembered the stories, the warnings from her people, the images she had seen. Humans were warriors, survivors, and sometimes destroyers. Could someone so strong truly be gentle? The meeting ended, and Lyra retreated to her chambers. She paced, her thoughts spinning like a storm. She had seen the human's actions, his gestures of kindness, his calm demeanor. Yet she feared that it was only a facade. That evening, she could not sleep again. She stood by her window, watching the sky darken into deep purple. Stars glittered faintly, distant and cold, yet somehow comforting. Her heart ached with uncertainty. She wanted to believe the human could be different from the stories. She wanted to trust him, but she could not ignore the warnings either. Lyra's hand rested on the cool glass of the window. The image of the captain helping the stumbling guard replayed in her mind. The smile, the careful movements, the respect in his eyes, these were small things, yet they carried a truth she could not ignore. Perhaps humans were not monsters, after all. Perhaps there was more to them than her people had taught her to believe. Still, tomorrow she would meet him again, in a more private setting. She could not know what she would discover then. Would he remain gentle, or would the strength and history of his people show a side she had not yet seen? Her heart was torn between fear and curiosity. Fear of the unknown, fear of a human's power, curiosity about his true nature. As she closed her eyes, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I will see the truth." The palace was quiet now, the soft hum of life within its walls barely audible. Lyra's attendants had retired for the night, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The wind outside whispered through the palace gardens, carrying the scent of alien flowers of distant oceans, and of a world that demanded courage. Lyra knew she needed that courage. Not to fight, not to flee, but to face the unknown. To see the human not as a legend, not as a monster, but as a being she could meet, speak to, and perhaps understand. And so she waited, alone in her chamber, with the stars above her as silent witnesses. She could not yet know what tomorrow would bring, but deep inside a spark of hope flickered. Perhaps the stories were wrong. Perhaps humans were more than their reputation. Lyra took a deep breath and leaned back, her mind drifting between fear and fascination. She had seen one human in action today, and though her heart was wary, a tiny voice inside urged her to believe. To see him not as the cruel human, but as a man who could teach her something new about courage, kindness, and the strength of a species she had never truly known. And with that, she finally closed her eyes, letting the soft glow of her chamber lull her into a restless, hopeful sleep. The next morning dawned with a soft golden light spilling across Velthera's palace gardens. Princess Lyra stood by her window, staring at the distant hills where Captain James Hale's delegation had set up their temporary quarters. The wind carried the faint scent of alien flowers and the subtle hum of the palace energy fields. Her mind was a swirl of emotions, curiosity, anxiety, and a cautious hope. She had spent the night replaying the events of the previous day. The human captain had not acted like a monster. He had shown respect, kindness, and patience. But she could not ignore her fears entirely. Humans were warriors, survivors of harsh worlds. Their strength was unmatched. Even a small mistake could unleash a force far beyond what Velthorans could handle. Lyra's attendants approached quietly, carrying trays of morning refreshments. She barely noticed them as she continued to pace. Ilaria, her closest handmaiden, followed her silently, her presence a comforting shadow. "Princess," Ilaria said softly, "you must eat something. You will need your strength for the meeting today." Lyra shook her head. "I cannot focus on food, Ilaria. My mind is full of questions. I do not know what to expect." Illyria nodded. "Then at least meet him with an open mind. He may not be what your people believe. Remember how he helped the guard yesterday?" "Small gestures reveal much," Lyra sighed, knowing Ilaria was right. Still, a knot of fear lingered in her stomach. She dressed carefully in a gown of pale blue silk, adorned with delicate silver embroidery. The color reminded her of the morning sky, calm yet radiant. Her hair, long and dark, was braided simply, allowing her natural beauty to shine without distraction. By the time she was ready, the palace had grown quiet. The servants whispered among themselves, sharing nervous glances. The humans had a reputation, and the Velthoran court was anxious to see if the princess would survive this meeting unscathed. Lyra walked down the crystal hall, her footsteps echoing softly. Every corner of the palace seemed alive with history, paintings of Velthera's past rulers, tapestries depicting ancient battles, statues of wise philosophers and diplomats, yet none of it mattered now. All her attention was on the human captain. When she reached the audience chamber, she paused at the doorway. The room was bathed in soft light, streaming through towering windows. At the far end, Captain Hale waited. He stood quietly, his posture relaxed but commanding. Even from a distance, he exuded a sense of calm authority that did not intimidate but drew attention naturally. Lyra stepped inside, and Hale's eyes met hers. They were deep blue, like oceans, of distant worlds, and they held a mix of curiosity and respect. His gaze was steady, not harsh. His presence was strong, yet not overpowering. Lyra felt her breath catch. "Princess Lyra," he said, his voice calm and even, "it is a privilege to meet you." Lyra bowed slightly, her hands clasped in front of her. "Captain Hale," she replied softly, "the privilege is mine." Hale gestured for her to sit at a small table set for a private meeting. The court's attendants and human officers remained at a respectful distance, allowing the two of them a space free from observation. As Lyra took her seat, she studied him carefully. There were no visible scars on his face, no signs of the harsh life the stories had warned her about. His armor, though impressive, was simple, practical, and well-maintained. Everything about him suggested discipline, not cruelty. Hale began speaking, not of politics or strategy, but of Velthera itself. He asked about the gardens, the palace's history, the customs of her people. His questions were thoughtful, genuine, and patient. Lyra found herself answering freely, feeling a strange sense of ease in his presence. After a while, Hale leaned forward slightly. "Princess Lyra," he said, "I understand your people have concerns about humans. They have seen our strength in our battles. It is natural to fear what is unknown. But I want you to know I am not here to harm you. Not for power, not for politics, not for anything." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight that reached deep into her heart. I do not know what to believe," she admitted. Hale nodded slowly. "I understand. My people are strong, and sometimes our actions are misunderstood. But we do not take life lightly. Every decision I make, every battle I fight, is weighed with care. I have seen loss beyond measure. That is why I fight, not to conquer, but to protect." Lyra felt a shift within her. The fear that had gripped her for so long began to loosen. She'd imagined a cruel human, a being incapable of compassion. Instead, she faced a man of integrity, patience, and quiet strength. The meeting continued. and Hale shared stories of his homeworld Earth. He spoke of forests, oceans, mountains, and cities, bustling with life. He described how humans survived catastrophes, rebuilt civilizations, and protected one another. Lyra listened intently, fascinated. Each story revealed a humanity that was complex, resilient, and deeply moral. At one point, Lyra's younger brother, curious and bold, wandered into the chamber. He carried a small flower from the palace gardens. Hale noticed him immediately. He knelt carefully, accepting the flower with both hands, and smiled warmly at the boy. "Thank you," he said gently. "It is beautiful." Lyra's heart softened further. The simple act of kindness spoke louder than any words. She realized that the human she had feared was capable of gentle actions that could not be taught or faked. After the meeting, Hale offered to show her around the human delegation's temporary quarters. Lyra agreed, hesitant but curious. As they walked through the compound, she observed the humans interacting. They were disciplined, organized, and efficient, yet they treated one another with respect and care. There was laughter, quiet conversations, and moments of camaraderie that made the soldiers seem less like monsters and more like a community. Hale noticed Lyra's interest and explained the purpose behind their routines. "Discipline allows us to survive," he said. "But respect allows us to live well together. Strength without respect is empty." Lyra nodded slowly. His words resonated deeply. She had always believed strength was measured in power and dominance. Hal showed her that true strength was balance, courage tempered with compassion, authority tempered with understanding. As the day went on, Lyra's fear continued to fade. She began to see the human not as a creature of conquest, but as an individual shaped by history, responsibility, and care for others. Each small gesture, a nod, a smile, a careful word, revealed a depth she had never expected. In the late afternoon, Hale invited Lyra to observe a human training exercise. Soldiers moved with precision, demonstrating agility, coordination, and strength. Lyra watched, fascinated by their skills, but she noticed something more: their teamwork. Every move was synchronized, every action purposeful, yet each individual cared for the other's safety. Lyra whispered to Illyria, who had accompanied her, "They are not cruel. They are careful, disciplined, and humane." Illyria smiled quietly. "Sometimes seeing is believing, Princess." Holly noticed her observation and said softly, "Strength is often misunderstood. People fear what they do not understand. But understanding changes perception. It allows trust to grow." By the evening, Lyra felt a strange calmness within her. She had spent an entire day with the human captain and his delegation, observing, listening, and learning. Her fear had not disappeared entirely. She was still cautious, but it had been replaced by curiosity and cautious respect. Back in her chambers, Lyra reflected on the day. The human she had dreaded meeting had proven to be thoughtful, kind, and honorable. She realized that the stories she had been told were only part of the truth. Humans were not merely warriors or conquerors. They were protectors, caregivers, and survivors. Her mind wandered to the upcoming wedding. Could she truly trust him? Could she see him not as the cruel human, but as a partner, someone who could share life with her? She did not know the answers, but for the first time she felt hope instead of fear. As night fell, Lyra looked out at the stars above Valthera. They twinkled faintly, distant yet constant, a reminder of the vast universe and the unknown paths it held. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Tomorrow I will see more of the truth. I will learn who he really is." And with that thought, she allowed herself a quiet smile. The human captain had already begun to change her perception, showing her that courage and kindness could exist together, even in beings she had been taught to fear. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt that the future, uncertain, strange, full of possibility, might hold something wonderful. The morning of the royal wedding dawned bright and clear over Valthera. The sky shimmered in shades of gold and rose, and the palace gardens glowed with dewdrops reflecting the light like tiny stars. Princess Lyra stood in her chambers, staring at her reflection in the tall crystal mirror. She was dressed in a gown of soft white silk, embroidered with delicate threads of silver and blue. Her hair was braided neatly, cascading down her back in a smooth wave, for the first time in many days. She felt a mixture of anticipation and calm. Yesterday's private meeting with Captain Hale had shifted something deep within her. The fear that had gripped her since the announcement of the engagement had been replaced, not by certainty, but by understanding. The human she had dreaded meeting had proven thoughtful, kind, and patient. Lyra's attendants busied themselves with the final preparations, adjusting folds of silk and polishing her jewelry. Ilaria approached, placing a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Princess," she said softly, "today will be remembered by our people. Your courage has brought understanding. The humans are not monsters, and your heart will see that." Lyra nodded. "I hope so, Ilaria. I want to believe it, but I must see it for myself." The palace gates opened, and the human delegation arrived for the ceremony. The sight of their sleek, disciplined ships landing gracefully in the palace courtyard had once filled her with dread. Now, it brought a strange comfort. She could see Hale among them, his calm presence steadying everyone around him. The ceremony began in the grand hall, adorned with flowers, banners, and crystal light. Veltheron nobles, diplomats, and citizens gathered to witness the union. The humans stood quietly, respectful of Velthera's traditions. Hale waited at the far end, his posture relaxed but dignified, hands folded in front of him. His deep blue eyes scanned the hall until they met Lyra's, and a faint reassuring smile appeared as Lyra walked down the aisle. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with cautious hope. She remembered all the stories she had heard about humans, warriors, conquerors, merciless beings. None of it matched the man she now saw. Hale was not fierce or harsh. He was composed, aware, and present. Every step he took reflected confidence tempered by care. When Lyra reached him, Hale extended a hand. "Princess Lyra," he said, voice soft yet firm, "it is an honor to stand with you today." Lyra took his hand, feeling its warmth and steadiness. She had expected coldness or roughness, but instead, there was gentleness. His grip was respectful, neither forceful nor hesitant. It was a gesture of partnership, not command. The ceremony progressed, following Velthera's ancient customs. The exchange of vows, though formal, felt genuine. Hale spoke not only of duty, but of respect, trust, and understanding. He promised to honor Lyra not as a possession or symbol, but as a partner, a friend, and a companion. Lyra's voice, when she spoke, carried sincerity. "I promise to meet you not as a stranger, but as someone willing to learn, to trust, to see the truth behind the stories." The crowd watched silently, captivated by the harmony between the two. It was more than a political union. It was a moment of revelation, showing the depth of understanding possible between two very different species. After the ceremony, Hale led Lyra to a quiet terrace overlooking the palace gardens. The sun shone gently on the flowers, and the air was filled with the scent of alien blossoms. Hale turned to her, eyes searching hers. "Princess," he began softly, "I know the stories your people have heard about humans. I know you feared me, perhaps even now, you still do. But fear often comes from misunderstanding. Humans are strong, yes, and sometimes that strength can seem frightening, but it is our choice how we use it." Lyra listened carefully, her heart opening a little more with each word. She thought of all the moments from the past days, Hale's patience, his kindness to her brother, his careful respect for every Veltheran he encountered. Each memory contradicted the fears she had carried for so long. "I see that now," Lyra said quietly. "I feared the strength I did not understand. I believed the stories, and I did not know the truth." Hale smiled gently. "It is natural to fear what is unknown, but now you see that our strength is tempered with care. We fight to protect, not to destroy. We build, not just conquer. And we respect life, not because it is demanded, but because it matters." Lyra felt a wave of understanding. She realized that humans, with all their history and power, were not cruel. They were capable of great compassion, courage, and moral strength. Her heart swelled with a mixture of relief and admiration. The day continued with celebrations across the palace. Humans and Velthorans interacted freely, sharing stories, laughter, and customs. Lyra noticed how Hale facilitated communication, ensuring that misunderstandings were resolved quickly and respectfully. His presence brought calm and trust, bridging gaps between two very different cultures. Later, Hale took Lyra to observe a human demonstration of their technology and defense strategies. The exercise was precise and disciplined, showcasing both skill and teamwork. Lyra watched, fascinated, but what impressed her most was the care for one another. Every move was calculated to ensure safety. Every action considered the well-being of others. It is unlike anything my people have ever seen. Lyra whispered to Ilaria, who accompanied them. They are strong, but they are not cruel. They are careful, disciplined, and humane. Ilaria nodded. Understanding reveals the truth, Princess. Courage and kindness can exist together, even in beings we once feared. As evening fell, Lyra and Hale stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the city and the glowing gardens below. The sky was painted with streaks of gold, pink, and deep violet. The air was cool and gentle, filled with the hum of life and distant whispers of stars. Princess Lyra, Hale said softly, turning to her, you have seen our actions and words. But there is one thing you should know. Humans carry the weight of our history. We have faced loss, destruction, and challenge beyond measure. That is why we value trust, respect, and partnership. Strength without care is empty, and power without understanding is dangerous. Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the colors of the setting sun. She realized that the human she had once feared was shaped by both history and choice. He could wield strength with care, courage with compassion. She felt her own heart align with this understanding. You have shown me much, she said quietly. I feared humans because I did not know them. But now I see. Strength can be gentle, courage can be kind, and understanding can overcome fear. Hale smiled, a warmth in his eyes that reached deep into her heart. I am honored, Princess, and I hope as we move forward together, you will continue to see the truth in both humans and yourself. The night celebrations began with music, dancing, and shared meals. Velthorans and humans mingled, learning from one another and forging connections that would last far beyond the wedding day. Lyra found herself laughing freely for the first time in days, her fear replaced by admiration, curiosity, and a growing sense of trust as the festivities continued. Lyra stole a moment of quiet with Hale away from the crowd. They walked through the palace gardens, illuminated by soft lights and the natural glow of alien flora. The air was filled with a gentle fragrance, and the night sky stretched endlessly above. Captain Hale, Lyra said, her voice soft, I once feared you. I believed the stories of cruelty and destruction, but now I see you as something more. You are strong, yes, but you are also careful, thoughtful, and kind. I am beginning to understand what it means to trust. Hola took her hand gently, their fingers interlacing naturally. Trust is earned, Princess, and I will continue to earn yours every day in action and word. You do not need to fear humans, because I will not allow harm to come to you. Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that she could step into the future with courage, not fear. The human she had once dreaded was no longer a figure of terror, but a partner in understanding. A being who could teach her about strength, compassion, and resilience. The night deepened, and the city of Velthera lay quiet beneath the stars. Lyra and Hale walked slowly through the gardens, sharing stories of their worlds, hopes for the future, and reflections on the past. Each word, each gesture, built a bridge between two species, uniting them not by obligation, but by understanding. By the end of the evening, Alir stood before Hale, looking into his eyes with clarity. She knew the truth. Humans were not cruel. They were strong, yes, but their strength was balanced with care. Their courage was tempered by morality. And Captain James Hale was a living testament to this truth. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me the truth. for showing me humanity beyond the stories." Hale smiled, a calm and steady warmth in his expression. "It is my honor, Princess Lyra, and I promise, together, we will show your people the true meaning of trust, courage, and understanding." As the night drew to a close, Lyra felt a sense of peace she had never known. The fear that had once shadowed her heart was replaced by hope, curiosity, and a budding admiration. The human she had dreaded was now someone she could see clearly, not as a monster, but as a being of courage, kindness, and strength, and for the first time, Lyra looked to the future not with fear, but with trust, knowing that the days ahead would be shared in understanding, respect, and partnership. Together, they would face whatever challenges,